I'm very proud to introduce someone I've known for a long time, someone I had the good judgment to hire as the Nation's Washington editor and correspondent after he completed his Nation internship. And Ari Berman began his work on voting rights at the Nation. And today, as a senior reporter at Mother Jones, Ari has established himself as the preeminent, vital, and authoritative voice on the modern struggle for voting rights in America. His book in 2015, Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America, was a groundbreaking narrative history. Ari not only charted the transformation of American democracy under the Voting Rights Act, but also covered the counter-revolution that has sought to delegitimize, suppress the voting rights from 1965 to very much this present day. And through his persistent investigative reporting and in-depth storytelling, Ari has shown a laser-like spotlight on the Republican Party's unrelenting attack on the right to vote, its multifaceted subversion of the election system. Ari's indefatigable reporting has uncovered who's behind it, how they're doing it, and why it matters for American democracy. He skillfully combines reporting, historical analysis to make the subject come alive, and he has had real impact, spurring and framing congressional hearings and legislation and its purpose. One of Ari's scoops for Mother Jones exposed the Heritage Action's dark money campaign to suppress the vote. The Hillman Award goes to Ari Berman.
Thanks so much. This is a huge honor. Thank you so much to the Hillman Foundation. It means a lot to get this award. I want to thank my editors and all my colleagues at Mother Jones, our editor-in-chief, Clara Jeffrey, my publisher, Monica Berline, my editor, Dan Schulman, all my colleagues who have helped with all of this reporting, my family for putting up with me. My wife, Meredith, is here. Thank you, Meredith. And it's really not an understatement to say that the people in this room quite literally inspired me to be a journalist. I mean, you think about all the people. Katrina's been a mentor to me since I was barely old enough to drink. I wanted to be Rick Hertzberg when I was growing up, before I even knew people called him Rick. Jelani, Clint, Ta-Nehisi, Eric Foner, these were and are my journalistic idols, and so it's a real honor to be here today. We're at a moment when so many core rights that we've cherished for so long are being rolled back at such an alarming rate, as we were reminded around 9 p.m. last night. And defending those rights starts with defending American democracy. Because if democracy is weak and our democratic institutions, like the Supreme Court, are warped, then all the rights we care about are going to suffer. And that's why I've been so passionate about trying to expose attacks on the right to vote. I wish I could take credit for being prophetic, but I kind of stumbled upon this issue. I wasn't born in the segregated South. My parents didn't meet marching in Selma. I knew about the civil rights movement. I knew about the importance of voting rights, but I think, like a lot of people, for many years, I kind of took it for granted. But my come to Jesus moment, even though I'm Jewish, took place after the 2010 election, when so many key states flipped from blue to red, and we began to see a wave of new attacks on the right to vote. Voter ID laws, cutbacks to early voting, closing polling places, disenfranchising people with past felony convictions. And this clearly seemed to me an attempt to try to nullify the election of the first black president and to try to prevent the eventual emergence of a majority-minority electorate. But it wasn't really getting any coverage. So I did what I always tell young journalists not to do. I pitched a story to Rolling Stone without knowing very much about the subject, and to my surprise, they said yes. And my first story about this issue was published in Rolling Stone in August of 2011, called The GOP War on Voting. And you could pretty much reprint it word for word today. Katrina wasn't super happy that my first story appeared in Rolling Stone and not The Nation, but to her credit, she encouraged me to make this a full-time beat. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a voting rights beat. But I became one of the first national reporters to cover this story, first for The Nation and then for Mother Jones. And really, the issue has only become bigger since then. What I came to realize is that the right to vote is preservative of all other rights. That if we do not have a healthy democracy, we will not have a healthy society or a healthy politics. And I think it's fair to say that we do not have a healthy democracy today. There's been so much coverage, and rightfully so, about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but we're in our own war for democracy at home. It's not as dramatic of an invasion, though we did have an insurrection. It's more like a death by 1,000 cuts. Close some polling places in Georgia, remove some drop boxes in Texas, purge some voters in Ohio, and soon enough, elections are decided not by who shows up, but who isn't able to vote. And if that fails, they'll just try to overturn the election altogether. The goal is to make democracy the exception rather than the rule. There's a lot more attention to this issue than when I first started covering it. That's a really great thing. There's a lot of great journalists covering voting rights right now. But it's not just whether we cover the issue, it's how we cover the issue. Too often this issue is still covered as Democrats versus Republicans, left versus right, voter fraud versus voter suppression. The story today is not Democrats versus Republicans. The story today is the Republican Party versus democracy. And we have to state that clearly and effectively. Ultimately, the right to vote is not a political issue, it's a moral one. As Lyndon Johnson said when he introduced the Voting Rights Act in 1965, it is wrong, deadly wrong, to prevent any of your fellow Americans from exercising the right to vote. My biggest fear is that we allow voter suppression to become the new normal. A lot of people who praised Martin Luther King supported poll taxes and literacy tests in the 1950s and 60s. We can't go back to the days where we accept, once again, people being turned away from the polls, where we say it's okay if someone couldn't vote because they didn't have the right ID, or their polling place was closed, or they were purged from the voting rolls. That's not okay, and we cannot allow that to become the new normal. One of my greatest privileges as a journalist was getting to know the incredible civil rights leader, John Lewis. John said, democracy is not a state. Democracy is an act. It's something that we have to fight for every single day. And that's what inspires me as a journalist. So thank you so much to the Hillman Award. Congrats to all the winners, incredible group of people, and it really means a lot. Thank you.